Hello, America. Dave Hodges here, host of the Common Sense Show. We are the show that is freeing America one enslaved mind at a time. Thank you so much for joining us. Really good to be with you. And we would encourage you to sign up for our newsletter. Over 50,000 people have subscribed. It's one-stop shopping because we do multiple presentations a day. Best of all, it's free. All you have to do is go to the Common Sense Show, the commonsenseshow.com and put in your email address in the newsletter link in the upper right-hand corner. No, we don't sell your data, and you'll receive yours first thing tomorrow. When does it arrive? Late afternoon, early evening, depending on your time zone. So we'd encourage you to do that today. We are going to talk to you about a breakthrough, a monumental breakthrough. Stansberry Research has really brought some of this out. I went and did some of my own research, complemented their story with some of my information here, but it's really, really interesting. Energy transmission and usage as we know it could dramatically change in under a decade. But there is an obstacle, and we're going to tell you about that obstacle. It's not good. It's not good. That obstacle allows the FBI to keep Nikola Tesla's files under lock and key, over 70 boxes. He was hundreds of years ahead of his time. One can only guess what's there. And we're going to talk about why that's possible. And it's not good. And we need to undo this. This edition of the Common Sense Show is brought to you by the Magic Die Call Starter Pack, 15% off retail price. And what you get are three spray bottles. What is that? When you hold it up, you just spray it in. Maintenance dose is 5 sprays once a day. You can use it as often as you need. It doesn't cure anything, but it does boost your immune system because it raises vitamin C, vitamin D, the nuclear receptors, and helps your telomeres, which is linked to cell longevity. And you know my story with RSV, strip lung linings, negative prognosis, and what this product did for me. And then you've got the topical gel, pluripotent stem cells created there. It's fantastic. And today, because I've used it on my bone on bone right knee, I can do things in the gym I haven't done in 25 years. I wish I could afford or wanted to have an MRI on my knee because I think we'd see structural differences because I'm doing sled pushes, squats, deadlifts. Haven't been able to do those things in 25 years until I started taking this. Took me 2 to 3 months to get there. And then, of course, you've got the Nanosoma skin cream. It's advertised as fine lines and wrinkles and moves that back. But for me, remember I used it on my cut? We were talking about that. I wrapped it up. I had such a bad cut. I should have had 4 to 6 stitches. Didn't want to mess with it. Let me see if I can fix it on my own. I used this, and that was the result. All three together, 15% off. Go to iwantmyhealthback.com/Dave Hodges. iwantmyhealthback.com/Dave Hodges. I'm going to share something with you here that it should be very concerning. I've mentioned this in passing more than once over the past couple of years, but I want to show you the real deal because some people say, oh, Dave, that act doesn't exist. Okay, well, I went and dug up the act from the Congressional Archives, and we're going to show it to you, and we're going to explain to you what it means. And then we're going to talk about the biggest energy breakthrough in the history of the world. Not my opinion, the opinion of experts. But there are some people who don't want to let this come to market for financial reasons, competition reasons, back to financial reasons. And we're going to talk about all that right here on the Common Sense Show. For those on social media, I'm showing you something here on screen called H.R. 4687, the Invention Secrecy Act of 1951. It was actually passed in early 52. And this is needed, but it's abused. So, in other words, I support the act. I don't support how far the act has gone. And this presentation, in terms of revolutionary new power and energy that's going to come into being, well, it's already in being. We're going to have to divide this into two parts because it's too complex. First, I want to take you through what I think the government's going to do. If there was anything that would ever threaten the oil companies, the new climate change technology with wind and solar and so forth. And by the way, I'm not opposed to that. We have solar on our house. Okay, so I'm in full support of that. But what I'm saying is the government recently has shown a vested interest to protect those industries, and I believe they're going to use this act to do this. Now, what if there was, and by the way, I'm not talking about zero point energy. We're not talking Nikola Tesla, although I'll bring him up as an example. We're talking about a new form of energy with science that's safer, cleaner, and more effective and monumentally applicable. And the effect economically is astronomical. We're going to talk about that in the next segment. But I want to show you what's going to keep this from coming into play, in my humble opinion, and I'll use a personal anecdote to explain that. Okay, so we're looking here at the Invention Secrecy Act of 1951. If we do decide to play this on our podcast and our radio networks, I'll give a verbal description of what we're looking at here, but this is a contextual from the Archives of Congress, Public Law 82-256, titled the Invention Secrecy Act of 1951. And I'm going to take you down here to the text here, and you can see Harry Truman was the president. Okay, Alan Barkley was the vice president. Sam Rayburn, the Speaker of the House, kind of the Newt Gingrich of his day, if you will. All right, we're going to go down to here, and I'm going to show you something very concerning. Okay, on page 3, chapter 4, I'm reading this to you. If, in the opinion of the Atomic Energy Commission, the Secretary of Defense Department or the chief officer of another department or agency does so designated, the publication and disclosure of an invention by granting of a patent would be detrimental to the national security, the Atomic Energy Commission, the Secretary of Defense, or any other chief officer shall notify the Secretary of Commerce, and the invention will be kept secret, and she shall be withheld from the granting of a patent for a period such as the national interest requires, and notify the applicant thereof. They also get in to talk about, because they involve the Department of Commerce, if this is not threatened national security in terms of technology, but it could threaten a lifeblood of the national economy, they can invoke the same power. That's why commerce is involved, and they go through and they spread out the explanation of this over time. And I don't want to make your eyes glaze over by having you look at all this stuff, but you can go look this up here. Just go at your search engine and put in the Invention Secrecy Act of 1951. Public Law 256, February 1st, 1952 is when it was formally signed into law by President Truman. When you look at this here, this is what's going to keep modern innovations from happening. And I have firsthand experience with this. You have heard me interview my good friend, Vance Davis. Vance was former NSA while he was in the U.S. Army, on loan to NATO and worked out of Germany. And Vance and I have talked about things like zero point energy and Nikola Tesla. That technology is wrapped up under lock and key in 1943 when Tesla died in his New York City hotel room. The FBI showed up and they took 70 boxes that they have not released to the public. And it contains zero point energy. Now, some of this stuff is coming out sideways through quantum physics. I'm not going to get into all the detailed explanation, but it's a multidimensional approach to science as opposed to the old Newtonian model of three-dimensional science. Michio Kaku, kind of the Carl Sagan of his day, if you will, in terms of notoriety and respect, famed professor at NYU. He wrote a book called Superstring Theory. I devoured it once, twice, 3 times. 26 dimensions that you can draw energy from. He explains the ramifications. He divides civilizations into type 1 through 4. We're at the end of type 0. He predicts we're going to destroy ourselves because of uranium. And he thinks 95% of all civilizations in the universe, if such exist, would go through a similar self-destructive pattern by waging war on itself with uranium. Ooh, that's negative. But he goes on to talk about if you get past this and you get to type 1 and you get well into type 1, you're fully controlling the weather, which we can cloud seed and do those kinds of things. And he said that you can actually alter geological events. Ooh, Mississippi River people, you listening to this? But I don't know how far away we are, hundreds of years, probably. Now, having said that, there's a new energy technology that I believe is going to be kept off the market. It's out there, it's being discussed. Stansberry Research has been involved in, and Jeff Bezos is throwing tons of money into this, but there's going to be a battle. There's going to be a huge battle. Let me tell you my own specific experience. Vance and my mentor in this business, the late Bill Pollock, who tragically passed from cancer about 13 years ago. Bill and Vance were close, close friends. Bill had an intelligence background. He was an electronic genius. Uh, Vance, very gifted in what he did with the NSA. And I became friends with these guys. I used to go to think tank meetings because I could share certain things they were interested in from my family's background. And we had to sign non-disclosure agreements. We had astronauts, scientists, so forth. And we're trying to figure out from a conglomeration of all these sources what was going on in our country and where was it headed. And I learned a lot. And trust me, some of these people that were there are household names, but I'm not allowed to reveal, except Vance and I have talked about these meetings on air. And before Bill passed, we talked about some of it too. And we used to meet right in the living room of Bill Pollock in La Placitas, New Mexico, which is just north of Albuquerque. Beautiful community, beautiful. Anyway, long story short, um, Bill was tampering with some things that you would call 0 point energy, creating energy out of the ethos. Okay. This is separate and apart from what I'm going to tell you in the next segment with the new energy that Jeff Bezos is backing that Stansberry Research has brought to light. We drew the attention of Enron. My role was that of a consultant. No, I'm not going to get into all the details because I was relatively a minor part, although I got to sit in on a lot of the telephonic meetings, and they were more than revealing. Enron was the fourth largest energy corporation of its type in the world when we started talking with them. And they had actually purchased land in the San Luis Valley to carry out Bill and Vance's ideas on creating energy out of ethos. Now, this is quantum physics model, not Newtonian. And I believe this is a lot of what the FBI holds with Tesla files under lock and key that they refuse to release. What is it, 80 years past his death? More than 80 years, and they still won't release it. We were close to a deal, but I will tell you one thing. We only met a couple of times with Ken Lay, Enron CEO. He came on and one time he said something. He says, "Well, gentlemen, you better all have your dead man switches in place," which means that if something were to be threatening to be happening to you, you let it be known that you got kill switches, and all this information will come out regardless. And Ken said that is kind of a matter of tongue in cheek. But Enron, when we started into this, boom, government came down on them. And I don't believe they were guilty of anything. I think it was they had gotten past the Invention Secrecy Act of 1951. That came up in our discussion. Gee, government didn't stop it here. I guess we can go forward. And that's when Ken made a sidebar comment about your dead man switches. And he was kidding. Turned out he wasn't kidding in its effect. And Enron was smashed. The project was killed. We didn't have any ramifications from the federal government because we weren't involved in finance with them. We were partnering in a technology in a land-based deal, which were perfectly legal and above board. Thank goodness, right? Um, that was my experience with how far the government will go to smash a technology. Now, they didn't use the Invention Secrecy Act in 1951, but I know it's been used in other areas. Let's take a look at what Stansberry Research said, and I'm going to read you a quote here, and this will be a good lead in to the next segment of our show. This energy transformation will revolutionize the entire planet and will be the most unbelievable economic boom in world history, and it will fundamentally change how we live on this planet. And they're correct. And like I said, I think it has nothing to do with Tesla technology. Bill's stuff did, but this I don't believe does. It's an inverse of an existing technology, and I'll explain the inverse when we get to it. But I do believe the Invention Secrecy Act is probably going to be employed at some point. You can employ it with the application for patent before you distribute, or the government can step in retroactively. Yeah, no ex post facto law here. And they can do away with the technology or limit or seize the technology from you and prohibit you from even talking about it. So I think this is a major, major concern because if this comes to market, there are going to be some really, really upset, very powerful and rich people. Very powerful. And I'm going to look into this further because I don't see a lot of evidence that existing energy moguls have control of this. I think this is a new set of players. To be continued. I'm Dave Hodges. This is The Common Sense Show.